Hello, everyone. This is the Authentic Cinema Podcast, Episode 1, our maiden voyage. My name is Mike Barron. I am here with my co-host, Bob Lyren.
Hey, Mike.
Today we're going to discuss Laura Poitras' 2022 film, All the Beauty and the Bloodshed, about the work and activism of Nan Goldin, which is available for streaming now on Max, formerly HBO. I'd just like to start off, I wanted to tell how I saw this film, because I think the circumstances are kind of funny. It's not a funny film by any stretch of the imagination. One of the things I try to do with films, and I really love when this happens to me, it's only happened to me, it's honestly only happened to me a couple of times in my entire life, but I really love it when I don't know anything about a film, and a film surprises me. I will admit I watched this film on a plane, and I was flying back from France this summer. It's a long 11-hour flight. I used to have a policy of watching only shitty movies on flights. I would watch like The Expendables and stuff like it because I was like, because I'm a film snob, and I think you have to respect the process of watching the film. But like, and I have to say credit to Air France. Like they always have like really interesting films. Like if you can dig in and there's really interesting films. The French,
the French are going to do it.
There's a tradition to uphold. So I was exploring and I was like looking for things that I didn't know anything about, and I saw this, and I have heard the name Nan Goldin in my past. Like I've looked at some of her photographs, I think, a long time ago, and I put it on, and I was not emotionally prepared to be watching this film on an airplane. I was in, I'll admit, I was in upgraded economy, like economy plus or whatever. And so I was like watching this film, and it made me cry. Like I started to cry, to weep.
Right. This film slices like a goddamn hammer, dude. Like, it just. Yeah. I mean, even the title of the film, All the Beauty and the Bloodshed. There's a lot in that, and but please continue.
So we should say who Nan Goldin is, I think, first. Nan Goldin is a photographer. I think that's probably a very, very, very highly respected photographer. I think she's based out of New York City.
She's a part of permanent collections of some of the best museums all over the world.
Her work started in the 70s in kind of the underground and margins of society in New York City and the East Coast. A lot of her work deals with transgender people, prostitutes. She kind of has a capacity, I've noticed, to capture kind of humanity in these kind of really raw environments. And the film, we should say, is about her activism against the Sackler family. And the Sackler family, we should say, they own Purdue Pharma. And Nan Goldin herself, after a surgery, became addicted to OxyContin, and it almost killed her. And she was lucky enough to survive it, and then started an activist group called PAIN, which is, I think it's Prescription Addiction Intervention Now is what it stands for. And she found out that the Sackler family are big players in the art world, and a lot of the places where her artwork is being shown and things like that has the Sackler name on it. And so the film, in one capacity, deals with her activism as she tries to take down the Sackler family, basically, like personally, like she would like to see them held accountable and put in prison. But also, like, there are these other objectives, like having the Sackler name removed from the museums. The film has sort of like two temporalities running. So it has the activist that's happening now. And Poitras, by the way, did the film with like Edward Snowden, Citizen 4. And I just bring that up to say, which is incredible.
Phenomenal film.
It has that, like, Poitras is really amazing at capturing like the urgent present. When you're watching a film of hers, it's happening now. It's unfolding. In Citizen 4, Snowden is literally being revealed. That is the film, is him unveiling.
In the hotel room in Hong Kong.
Right. And the way that works in this film is the activism. So you start this journey with Nan in the present as she is organizing and protesting these incredible protests at these museums. And then the second temporality is her life story.
Right. I think the amazing thing, on paper, this film never would have worked. Like, it doesn't make any sense. I mean, I first learned or saw Nan Goldin's photography in the early 2000s when I moved to Los Angeles, and our good friend Suso, remember Sue? She was the one that introduced introduced me to Nan's photography. And I remember when I saw Nan's photography at the time, I was just like, it was so raw and just so unlike anything I'd ever seen that you're just immediately drawn to it. And if you had told me like, oh, we're going to do a documentary where the world of Nan Goldin's photography intersects with the grassroots protest campaign against the Sackler family, it wouldn't have made any sense. But what the film does so brilliantly is, as you said, it explores those two temporal paths, and they're actually running parallel for the better part of like 30 years, and then they intersect, and then everything blows up. And that's actually in hindsight, after watching the film, you would say you could never tell the story of Nan Goldin's photography and her life and what happened to her in her early childhood and what propelled her into becoming a photographer and everything that happened afterwards. You could never tell that story without exploring this parallel story of opioids, OxyContin. And so it's amazing that these things came together for this amazing filmmaker, Laura Poitras, to capture.
What I appreciate about the film too is it doesn't force those things together, right? And it's not like, immediately clear to you
exactly
why it's not unpleasant. You're not like, well, what the hell are we talking about this for? But it's not until the end that you realize like, oh, okay, I see. And again, there's that sense of revelation at the end. I wanted to read a quote, and it's the first thing that Nan Goldin says, really the first time we hear her voice in narration.
I noted that quote too.
This quote will like tell you the whole movie.
On second viewing, when you see it the second time, you're like, oh yeah, this is the whole movie. They laid it right out for you.
She says, it's easy to make your life into stories, but it's harder to sustain real memories. And then Poitras asks her, what do you mean? And she says, well, the difference between the story and the real memory. The real experience has the smell and is dirty and is not wrapped up in simple endings. The real memories are what affects me now. Things can appear that you didn't want to see, where you're not safe. And even if you don't unleash the memories, the effect is there. It's in your body.
Right.
You know, why do I say that says everything about the film? Because her work, her photos, they have that. When you see a Nan Goldin photo, you can smell it.
Absolutely.
It's visceral, right? I think that's the word that comes up a lot for me when I was watching. It's like visceral. And the theme that popped for me for this film was this idea of life affirmation. Nan Goldin's work affirms life. And in order to affirm life, you have to affirm all the beauty and all the bloodshed. And also, this film looks at a lot at conformity. And a big part of this film is Nan Goldin's sister, her sister, Barbara, who was probably a lesbian and was forced in the mid-1960s, forced into all kinds of mental health institutions. But essentially the idea is she was forced into a mold. She didn't fit.
Yeah, keeping up with the Joneses.
Exactly. Keeping up. She did not fit the conformist or the establishment mold of what was acceptable. And it eventually, she was in and out of institutions, had a really horrific kind of life, actually, if you think about it, particularly psychologically, like, and for no reason, you know, like we look at it now in 2023 and we go, that's insane. Like it's awful what happened to her. But she was forced into institutions, and it really just culminated in her committing suicide. And then the family, Nan's family, denying it to the kids, like trying to lie about it to the kids and hide it. What Nan Goldin does is so there's like kind of two conceptions of the image. The Sacklers use image and they use art as a mode of sanitization to hide. They try to hide the bloodshed of life. Right.
Using all the beauty of their art that they accumulated through their wealth, to hide the bloodshed.
Which is Purdue Pharma. That's the bloodshed, of which they are directly responsible. It's hiding this, the pain. I was thinking about OxyContin. What is an opioid doing? It's essentially hiding the pain. It doesn't eliminate pain. All it does is it rechannels pain into other categories. So you have like a physical pain that, you know, let's say you have knee surgery or something, or you're being treated for cancer. That pain on your knee goes away temporarily. But what happens instead is it metastasizes and turns into an addiction, which then channels pain into your psychology. It destroys your family. And then that pain then transfers into all these other people that care about you and wipe you out, right? Like you cannot remove pain. Just like Nan Goldin's sister can't stop being a lesbian, right? Like it's not, you can't make that go away. Like that's life. That's something that emerges in life and happens. But there's this force in our society, particularly in power structures, where we try to hide that pain. So you have the Sacklers who use the image to consolidate power, to consolidate wealth. They use images to sanitize, to hide, to conceal, to deceive. Nan Goldin, and why she, I think, is the perfect opponent for them, is because Nan Goldin uses the image to liberate. And she liberates by showing you all the beauty and the bloodshed. You cannot have life, you cannot have the human experience without the bloodshed. Nan Goldin shows you images of sex. She shows you images of people in coffins, people weeping at funerals. Nan Goldin shows you the pain. And in order for her to be able to show you and understand that pain, this is a woman whose life has been almost defined by pain. But that's the power of what what her work does, and what makes her sort of uniquely suited to fight somebody so strongly, so powerful as the Sackler family.
No, it is your insight into the Sackler family and how they're using their name to hide the bloodshed and hide the pain is spot on. And I think to go back to Nan's photography and to go back to the early stages, essentially Nan suffered just almost unspeakable tragedy at an early point in her life through the relationship with her sister Barbara that you articulated. You know, this was a girl she was basically just a misunderstood kind of misfit child that got pigeonholed and blocked into something because at the time that's the only choice they had. And it had a snowball effect that just essentially destroyed this beautiful young girl that was just essentially, she was just an outlier child, but it destroyed her, and Nan was there to witness it all. And what that did was, through the death of her sister, it pushed Nan out on her own to those fringes, to those places. Yes. I don't like to use these words, but I will for the sake of the conversation. Outcasts, misfits, people that are living on the fringe. Okay. And so when Nan, taking the sort of the heavy load of what had happened to her before, and so she goes out and finds these people. And the thing about Nan's photography is that when we say it's raw and it's real and it speaks, that's true. But one of the things that occurred to me was that you can't take those photos unless you're already a member of that tribe, a member of that community. Nan was not visiting these people on the weekends to take these photos with these people that had been discarded by society. I mean, there's another quote in the film, which is that she said, my roommates, meaning the people that she was living with and taking photos of, she says, my roommates were running from America and we found each other. Okay. And so that's who Nan was. They were all running from something, and Nan started documenting it, probably as a form of like therapy and trying to understand her own pain and her own problem. And they were essentially all on this road diverging to this one point. And as you said, it's, as I said earlier, like to think that this would somehow be correlated to a multi-billion-dollar family corporation that's pushing opioids onto the world, like, and as you said, like Nan turned out to be the perfect adversary or the perfect hero to fight this cause, because Nan Goldin, the photographer, okay, I get that part. Nan Goldin, the activist, I'm like, okay, sure, she's an artist and she has a social consciousness about the things that she's seen. I get that part. But then you're going to bring the Sacklers into this and she's going to fight that. I'm like, this is unbelievable. And it goes back again to the director, Loya Poitras, that she saw this and she saw that these things were, like you said, in real time, were converging. And it could only be Nan. Nan is the only person. And what you learn by watching the film is, as heartbreaking and difficult as it is, Nan is the only person that could have done this. And she did it. And she did it. And she succeeded. Like, it's amazing.
Yes, she succeeded in getting the names removed from the museums, which is huge. And also from like cutthroat hedge funds and stuff stopped taking Sackler money, which is crazy. She succeeded. I wanted to say something because I wrote down that same quote that you talked about. Like, my roommates were running away from America and they found each other. And what she says there that's really interesting, she's like, they weren't trying to be like rebels. They weren't trying
Right.
to start a revolution. Like, they were just trying to be themselves. Her roommates were transgender, homosexuals, people like, in a way, like her sister. Artists like that.
Yeah.
That just did not fit in society. And what Nan Goldin shows you too, and what this film is about, is how dangerous those edges of society. When you are pushed out into those areas of society, you are pushed out of society. Basically, you are an extraordinarily vulnerable place. It's in other words, this isn't some romantic bohemian dream.
No, people trying to survive.
Yeah, you are in a space of survival.
Right.
And what Nan does with her photography, if we think about it spatially, she talked about this idea of, first of all, she said, well, I wanted she was talking about her transgender friends. She's like, I wanted to put them on Vogue magazine, and I thought that was great. But what she said too is she would say, I always let them tear up the photos of themselves.
If they didn't like them.
Yeah, if they didn't like them. And I was, at first, my initial reaction is like for an artist to do that, I'm like, I don't know if you want to do that. Like, geez, But then I thought, well, no, because that's exactly what this is about, which is, she says, I wanted them to feel great about the way they looked in these photos. And I was like, well, of course, because what she's doing, if we think about this spatially, within these photos, these people could be themselves. They could just be. In the square of a Nan Goldin photo, people are who they are. They can be
which
who
is
they
why
are.
Which is why Nan Goldin's photography is authentic. Okay, it's absolutely authentic. And so to go back to her quote about, it's easy to make your life into stories, but it's harder to sustain real memories. I think that Nan's motivation through her photography was taking the tragedy of what happened to her sister Barbara, someone that was not allowed to explore the fringes or the sort of the outer edge of who she was. She was being conformed and pushed into a box, and then denied in her final moment of death. It was denied. And so when Nan left home and encountered this community, she said, I have to help them. And the way, by also helping her sister Barbara, the memory of her sister Barbara, helping herself, but I have to help these people. And the way that I can help them is showing them how beautiful they are. Okay.
Yeah.
And so she said, I'm going to photograph them exactly as they are. Okay. Yes. And let them decide if that's how they want to be perceived by society. Okay. Yes. I'm making a document to preserve these memories, to preserve these people. Okay. Yeah. And it's insane. There's a part in the middle of the film, which I don't know how much we will get into, but I'll just mention it briefly. But if you think about the through line of Nan from when she left home with the things with Barbara to then being exposed to this community and trying to survive with these people. And also, let's not forget, like, one of the reasons I think this film is so emotional is because these are people.
Yes. And just to touch on what you just said about taking the photos of them and helping them, I don't know if it was a conscious effort necessarily to help them, but she was capturing them and saying, this is real. These are really here in a society that was saying, like, this world is not supposed to exist. Well, it does. It does exist. What I wrote down something last night. I was like, Nan Goldin is showing you photographs from a world that is not supposed to exist. So the very act of showing a transgender, prostitute, like, this does exist. You can't deny it. Like, it's there.
And just because and someone is a transgender prostitute or a drag queen bass player that's also addicted to drugs, guess what? They're also a human being with feelings and dreams and ideas, okay? And they're trying to survive. And the irony and the disgusting irony is that the people that were in that conformed society that she was trying to be forced into, they're no happier, they're no better off than these people. And I think that Nan was trying to express that. But
well, yeah, the idea, like her mother, right? Like with her own mother, where in the film you find out, because she gets to actually see the like documents from the institutions where her sister was admitted, and several of the doctors are like, there's actually nothing really wrong with this girl. Her mother, on the other hand,
should be here. Yeah. And I think that once what Nan did is, we say things like raw, but really what she's doing is stripping away all of the preconceived notions that we have of someone that we see across the street on the corner. And she's like showing you them in their house, like curling their hair or putting on their makeup or sharing an intimate moment with a friend. And see, the thing is that one of the most fascinating things of the film and of Nan's story, she was front and center for the AIDS epidemic in New York in the 80s. Okay. For me, when I watched the film the first time and I watched it again this morning, and I'm watching that part when they're front and center with the AIDS epidemic.
Yeah.
And, dude, it's pulling on the heartstrings. Like I can feel myself starting to tear up because I'm like, it's these people. Okay. It's just, and the correlation can be made to the opioid epidemic, which is what the film does. But in the 80s, during this AIDS epidemic, it was people that were dying. They were just dying literally in the streets, and they were screaming for help. Like, why is no one paying attention to what is going on? And Nan was a part of that through her photography. That was her tribe. That was her people. Okay.
Well, she put on that show, that curated a show of people, and she's like, I want it to be about AIDS.
That's right. It's heartbreaking and also so inspiring. And then that happened, and what you see from that,
she shows you the absolute fucking horror of what was going on,
and it's scary sometimes when we pull the curtain back and take a look behind at what's going on, and then what in the film that transitions to this opioid epidemic, and Nan is essentially in familiar water because she never stopped. Like I said, she wasn't a weekend tourist. Okay, she lives in this world. Okay, and so she saw it.
She's part of it. So like she's
is.
not just like coming in on the weekend to sort of look at this like as a voyeur. No, I'm in the milieu. This is my I'm in this milieu. I'm a part of it. I am one of them. And what you're touching on here is, and why the AIDS crisis is so important in this story, again, is this idea of stigmatization. People being stigmatized, right?
Right.
And it's not just a label. It's not just like an identity that's given to you that you're unacceptable. People fucking die.
Many people, right.
And she, again, is uniquely suited and has this experience. She has experienced what the actual consequences of that are. And so, when it gets to OxyContin, which is particularly insidious, right? Like, you have knee surgery because you're in high school, you're 17, you're in your high school football game, and you get tackled and you fuck up your knee.
And you blow your knee out,
And your doctor, who has been told by a pharmaceutical rep that they have like essentially like a safe opioid to prescribe to you that's non-addictive that will take that pain away so you can recover, you become addicted to that substance. This is what is so insidious about this drug, is that polite society has sanctioned it. So your doctor gives it to you. You're supposed to. What happens when you fuck up your knee? Are you not supposed to go to your doctor? No, you go to the fucking doctor. The doctor prescribes you this pain medication that makes you feel better, but then you become a heroin.
Opioid addict. Yeah,
it takes over your life. Completely takes over your life. And then you have to switch. You make the switch from.
They have to move from the proper channels to the improper channels, right?
So you get pushed out into the improper channels, and you start buying things like heroin.
Fentanyl.
And so then, what do you become? You become a drug addict. And what is a drug addict? It's a stigmatized part of society. This is the real horror and danger of what we do when we moralize a healthcare issue. We've taken something from the realm of healthcare. Like addiction is actually, it's a really shitty, complicated, hard issue, but it is at its core a healthcare issue, not just in the medical sense, in a spiritual, psychological, whatever. What we do though, by making it a moral issue, well, then we create a stigma, which then allows us to say good, bad needs to be cleaned up and hidden away. Right.
And you're not doing it properly, even though this is a medical and moral issue. We set some guidelines for you. You haven't followed the guidelines. Therefore, the problem is you.
Yeah.
Like you're a bad person, or you're an addict, or you don't want to get better, or whatever.
And I think one of the reasons why the opioid epidemic in particular why it's resonating so strongly though, is because the journey starts with polite society. It starts with your doctor prescribing this medication to you, and then you become this like stigmatized subject.
Let me ask you to sort of bring it back to the film itself and maybe the director. Like, how do you think that the film? What do you think that Laura Poitras and All the Beauty and the Bloodshed does to kind of to achieve this like we talked a little bit about what authentic means.
What makes
like,
it
why
cinematic too, right?
Yeah.
Like, because I think the risk of something like this is it could, if it's not done well, it just, one thing, it's going to tell you what to think.
Right.
It's going to give you a simple answer. And then just from an aesthetic standpoint, I think the risk of a film like this is that it ends up turning into like it looks and feels like a news report, right?
Right.
What I really admire and why I really committed to discussing this in episode 1 of our podcast is that it also feels like a film. You could watch this in a cinema. Like, you could go to the cinema and watch this on a big screen and it would hold up because it's the way the film is edited. It breathes. And nothing in the film feels like forced. Like, I'm telling you this, or you need to pay attention to this. It's not immediately clear like why this makes sense together.
I think
speaking a cinematic language, I think, is
right.
Whatever that means.
Yeah, I think you're right. I mean, I think that there's a cinematic aspect to the film. And I think that when we're talking about authenticity in cinema, one of the things I was thinking about while I was watching the film was that it's really hard for films that are easily compartmentalized into genres to be authentic, because those films are often, while they might be very entertaining or popular or evoke feelings from you, it's really hard to be authentic when you're adhering yourself to a genre. Like, this is a drama, or this is an action film, or this is a comedy. It's hard to be authentic when you're doing that, because really you're there to serve the genre. And so what Poitras is doing with this film is she's really, like you said, letting the film breathe, and she's not adhering to any special. This is not a traditional documentary. And I think that that being said, one of the most ingenious and clever things about this, and I don't know Poitras, and I don't know if she knew this going into it, but she actually has all these little bookmarks that you need to make a really compelling film, like a villain, like a main character trying to overcome adversity, with an interesting backstory, with elements of humanity that the viewer can latch onto, with like real events, like all these things that we would, if you and I were going to go make a film, we would be like, well, we need to make sure that the main character is fighting it for a greater cause, and there's an overcoming a huge obstacle against a villain that they're never gonna, like, it's all there.
Yeah.
And so the fact that she was able to do that within like the scope of this, just like I said, it's almost unbelievable to me that I feel like, to be perfectly honest, if I had access to Laura Poitras and she had pitched me this, I'd have been like, I don't get it. Independently, all these things are cool. You could do a documentary about Nan Goldin and her photography. That's good enough. Yeah, you could do a documentary about the Sackler family and about this crazy story about how they've essentially used their philanthropy at museums and universities to whitewash their atrocities. Or you could also do a third documentary just about the grassroots movement to address this issue. Like, there are essentially 3 different films in this one film, and she's just a master at sort of letting the little parts overlap and feed each other.
What it's doing too, though, is like, if you just have the activist story, which it's powerful, but by telling the biographical, by sort of telling those 2 stories together, like if we're looking at a line, they're running parallel to each other, like, right? And then they eventually merge kind of at the end, but they never merge in this like neat and tidy way. They kind of merge in a way that is actually, it's more about how it resonates. Like, the meaning kind of floods through you.
Right. For me, what it was that, like, if you'd have taken any 3 of the stories, so the Nan story, the photographer, the activist story, and then the Sackler family, those 3 different stories, I don't think if you'd have made a film about any one of those 3 topics, that it would have had as emotional and authentic impact that it did when you merge them. Because, like, the backstory of Nan and how she gets to where she is absolutely informs her relationship and ideas for her grassroots campaign and the Sackler family. So they all just kind of like feed off of each other and create something that is wholly authentic.
By having those simultaneous stories kind of running in parallel, like, what she's actually doing is creating this incredible depth.
Right.
Like, what it does is it's like, okay, this isn't just a fucking news story you read on your phone.
Oh, another huge corporation is screwed over the American
like,
people.
we know that. Everybody already knows that. What she's doing is she's attaching this to a real human being. And what that does is it gives it depth. It gives it meaning
and like
and
the most
depth, and
perfect
it's not
human
tidy
being,
and
the
clean.
most perfect human being that you could, like you said, it's not tidy, it's not
well,
clean.
the most perfect, a very imperfect human being,
film.
but a human being, someone who is the most. That's what makes it compelling. Is this person is actually, you have this one person who is so uniquely suited to go into conflict with this sort of monolithic family that and bring them down. This is an idea I was thinking about earlier. I was jamming by myself. I was like, what Nan Goldin does to you is she shows you what a human being can be.
Right.
So it's not just like, oh, a human being can be a transsexual, a human being can be a ruthless CEO. I love the part about like at the Tin Pan Alley bar where like the IRS guys that used to come in, like everybody used to come in, and like, you know, bikers, IRS guys, and the IRS guys, when they got drunk, they were harder to handle than the biker. Like, so we see this sort of multiplicity or this complexity of what humans can be, but in terms of differentiation, but we also see what people can, just a single person can be different things. I think that's illustrated a lot in her. Well, we look at Cookie Muller, for example, who's many things. Nan Goldin herself is many things. She's an artist. She's a prostitute. Right. She's a little, you know, she's a young Jewish girl. She's a world famous photographer. She's an activist. She's all these many things, which when we try to lump people into conformity, then we're just trying to make them one thing. And I think this movie shows like, no, a person can be many things. And the most powerful moment where that came through to me was with the guy that beat her up, which her boyfriend in New York. But even in that story, when she starts telling the story about him, she talks about he was very caring. He was gentle. He was like this great lover. Like he was, you know, but he's also this fucking monster that tries to gouge out her eyebrows. It's not one or the other. It's all those things, right? And that's what this film is about. It's about all of it. It's about all the beauty and the bloodshed. Right. It's about all of it. And that we are many things. There are many different types of human beings. And then if you take one of those specimens of human beings, that human being within themselves, within their experience, over time will be many things, oftentimes dependent on the relationships that they have with other people. And part of the story of the film, too, is this idea of community and what communities create and the people that are created within it.
Where we're coming to this end is that Nan was the perfect person and might be the only person that could have been in the position that she's in because of not only because what the story, the film is about, we covered it already. The film's about many things, but the fact is that in order to tell this story the way that Poitras told it, she needed someone that not only carried with them a lifetime of pain, but also someone that was documenting a lifestyle and a part of society and all those things that were happening to those people. In other words, to take this journey of Nan Goldin through her own personal life and her photography, and then to take it to this point of intersecting with the opioid crisis and the Sackler family, the only way we could have got there was with Nan. In other words, that's what we were talking about before. Like, you can't make individual films about each one of these people and have them work on a level that all the beauty and the bloodshed does. And so I think that because Poitras is an amazing filmmaker, she understood, like you talked about at the beginning of the pod, like, this isn't something I need to force. I can't grab it. Okay. I need to, you can't force this. It's too raw. It's too hot. Okay. We say that Nan is the only, after you watch the film, you think, well, Nan's the only person that could have, she without Nan, there is no film. If Nan didn't want to do this, then there is no documentary. Okay. And maybe it might be a little bit of a stretch, but I don't think so to say that Poitras, given her previous films and the way that she likes to work, and clearly her understanding, not only of like Nan and the subject matter and society at large, she was probably the best filmmaker to make this film. This film is, so to back to the authenticity, like this, Poitras is the
only Laura Poitras could tell this correctly.
Exactly. And the way that she told it is absolutely authentic and real because she told the story.
I've only watched a couple of Poitras' films, and I wrote down a note about that. And I think this is why she's great. I said there's a courageous honesty that runs through Poitras' films. She selects subjects who not only risk it all to show us the reality of our experience or their experience, but help us feel in a visceral way what it really costs to see that reality. Right. And Poitras goes, and what I really respect about her and what she seems to understand in this story is like, you can't sanitize this. This is absolutely not a story that can be sanitized. In fact, to tell this story properly, you need to go all the fucking way.
Right.
What Poitras achieves here is, you can look at these photos of Nan Goldin and they are raw and they are from this world that was pushed aside, but now we're looking at them in 2023, right? And I think there's a real risk to kind of like romanticize or fetishize these photos.
Right.
They could be co-opted by the machine and made into
look how great it is.
Commercial images.
We embrace this.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. This is awesome.
The shallow response is like, this is cool. Because they are. Like, they are on a level. I'll just admit it. Like, these photos are fucking cool. Right. Like, you look at this and you're like, wow, that's really fucking cool. What Poitras does, though, is she doesn't let you do that. She says, no, actually, like, these people, like, and these situations that you're looking at, these people were fucking marginalized. These people were pushed out. These are people on the edge, the absolute, like, most fragile edges of the world, of existence. And they struggled. And the achievement for me, more than anything else, we see these photos and I'm not going to say we understand all the pain. In fact, we kind of understand that we don't understand. But we also understand that this isn't some cheap image that you scroll over real fast on your Instagram feed or your TikTok feed. This beauty was brought to you by a lot of bloodshed.
Right.
I think she honors the work of Nan Goldin in that way, in the sense of like, Nan Goldin doesn't come out of this, and the thing that we learn about Nan Goldin is that she's a fucking cool photographer.
Right. Well, I think that's a good way to sum it up. And the only thing I wanted to add is that I think that to piggyback on what you're saying is that Nan, like you said, Nan's pain it's real, and it's not sugar-coated, and it's not presented for our enjoyment. Okay. And none of this is actually presented for our enjoyment. It doesn't mean that the movie it's a sad film. It's a heavy film. It's raw, but it's also incredibly inspiring and emotional. Okay. And I think that what Poitras does as an auteur or as an authentic filmmaker is she understands that she had to let this all happen. Like we said at the beginning, she can't try to force it. She can't try to grab it. She has to let it happen. And it's amazing the process to go from little Nan Goldin who leaves home to the Sackler family, which is a multi-billion-dollar organization. And so everything in between, that's what all the beauty and the bloodshed is. Okay. And for Poitras as creating something authentic, she lets it all happen. So that's why we picked this film, because it has all of those elements.
Yeah. It doesn't pull any, it doesn't. And I think that's something to kind of wrap it up today. And what this podcast will be about is we want to look at filmmakers that they take you all the way.
Right. So my sort of closing idea is that, we're here to talk about authentic cinema, but I have a feeling, as we were joking, that the point of doing the podcast is because we can't define this word and we can't define what it is. But I think that my prediction is, Mike, is that you and I are also on a journey right now, both together and individually as human beings. And we're looking for direction. We're looking for something, and we're going to this thing that's very important to us, which is cinema. And we're trying to find it, not only for our experience of watching it, but for us as human beings. And I think that the good news is, for anyone that's listening to this, the good news is there's so many films that fit into what we're trying to do. And we've got some great ideas about things we're going to talk about. We're still working on some other ones, but we think that there's going to be a lot more conversations to come, and hopefully a lot of exploration and growth for you and I and us together. So well,
this has been fantastic, Bob. I really look forward to our next conversation. Again, I just want to throw this out there. The film that we discussed today is All the Beauty and the Bloodshed by Laura Poitras. Came out in 2022. I think it was nominated for an Oscar. It should have. Yeah. Well, I think should have won something. But it's available on Max.
Yeah. One more as a sideline piece, as a companion piece, Mike. Just to mention it before we talk, is the article. So what was the article?
Yeah. So we have. I actually took two articles. and I'll put them in the show notes. Okay. There's one Artforum article. It's just called Nan Goldin. Actually, I called it, for my own notes, I Survived the Opioid Crisis, which, you know, I don't know if we talked enough about that. It's too late now, but like she herself was addicted to opioids. Right. Like she went through OxyContin herself. That's sort of the final piece is like she experienced and photographed herself in her addiction and recovering from her addiction. And the other big article is the Patrick Raden Keefe article, The Family That Built an Empire of Pain, in the New Yorker. Like if you are interested in the opioid epidemic just in general, if you want like a 3-dimensional or 4-dimensional map of the opioid epidemic territory and Purdue Pharma and the Sacklers, this is a great starting point for you. And we will be back in a couple of weeks with episode 2. Bob,
all right, thanks, Mike.
Always a pleasure, sir.